Good morning, distinguished guests. I feel honored to be in the presence of ministers and secretaries of education. I come from a family of teachers, so it's a special occasion for me. I want to talk about a situation that all of us, at least most of us, have experienced, and a solution that we have sometimes seen happen and wondered why it doesn't happen more. The situation is like this. Imagine yourself in a town where there's a school and there's a problem of violence or drugs or bullying or other forms of troubles. The school administration and teachers, they are all well-meaning people. The parents want the best for their children. But the situation continues. It is not resolved until something happens. You can think about similar examples in a place where there is an ethnic minority or religious minority, and their children need education, otherwise their children fall prey to violent terrorist organizations. Everybody recognizes their need for education to give them an opportunity so that they will not fall prey to this organization, but it is not done. The organization threatens those who want to do something, and then nobody is courageous enough to do something. You can imagine other situations. And I'm going to talk about a solution that actually happens. We experience, we witness it, and hopefully we draw some lessons as to how we can reproduce that solution more. My organization, the Alliance for Shared Values, is a new organization. It's an umbrella for dialogue and cultural organizations. Most of these organizations were established by individuals inspired by Mr. Fethullah Gülen, who is a prominent Turkish Muslim scholar, preacher, and social advocate. Our common goal is to help build a culture of living together in peace and harmony, despite differences. On what values, on what issues, on what visions and concerns can we come together, even if we cannot come together on other issues? And our website is not active at this moment, but we expect it to be active pretty soon. It's going to be Alliance for Shared Values, or for short, afsv.org. The examples, I want to illustrate this concept based on some examples, and the examples come from projects done by the participants of a social movement that started in Turkey. It's called the Hizmet movement by its participants. The word means service or serving in Turkish. It started out as a community of pious Muslims around preacher Mr. Fethullah Gülen, but later it actually became much more than a community. It is becoming a social movement that includes non-Turks, non-Muslims in it to varying degrees. And it's also become transnational. It is no longer just in Turkey. It's gone into over 100 countries. It focuses on 5 main areas of activity. The primary one is education, various forms of educational institutions, as well as individual efforts. Healthcare in the form of hospitals, clinics, and also doctors and nurses doing pro bono service. You can think of it as the Turkish version of Doctors Without Borders. Disaster relief and economic assistance, media for the purpose of responsible, socially responsible media, and also interfaith and intrafaith dialogue. There are also hundreds and maybe thousands of professional associations, both in the area of business and other professions, that both promote development in their field and also they support charitable projects. Mr. Gülen has been recognized as the most influential scholar and preacher and social advocate in Turkey. He was known for his stance against violence of any form. He condemned the 9/11 attacks shortly after the attacks, and he called bin Laden a monster, as a matter of fact, in an interview to a major newspaper. He supported democratization of Turkey, Turkey's potential prospective membership in the European Union. And the themes in his discourse are roughly the themes where the movement participants build projects. And these include education, community service, social justice, a dialogue for community peace, and developing a virtuous individual for the purpose of a virtuous society. Some examples from these institutions include schools. These are sometimes private schools. Most of them are private schools. This one is from Turkey, the city of Bursa. And I chose this particular picture because it illustrates the nature of the school. It is non-sectarian. It is a secular school. And especially they emphasize educating girls. It includes both sciences, math, as well as arts and social science education. And in the lower right example, you see a little girl who won a medal in a social science Olympiad. And the other girls on the top, they are in the music class. This is a hospital in Istanbul, and a volunteer doing medical service in a country, probably in Africa. This is a hospital recently built in the southeast of Turkey, the city of Şanlıurfa, which is serving both southeast Turkey as well as northern Iraq and other countries in the region. And at the smaller picture, you see the main architect of that project. Unfortunately, I forgot her name. This is a snapshot from the projects of the Kimse Yok Mu Foundation, which can be translated as "Isn't there anybody listening?" But it is a disaster relief and economic assistance organization, and they serve disaster victims everywhere in the world, from Peru to the tsunami, to Japan and other places, to Haiti. In the lower left, you see a doctor who is doing pro bono free cataract surgery, again in some place in Africa that I cannot remember right now. This is a very meaningful project in Sudan, in Darfur region. They are rebuilding a village that was devastated. They are building the clinic and the school and all the other institutions, places that the people of that township need in Darfur. They established the concept of the sister family so that the economic assistance to the families in need can be continued. It is just not a one-shot help, but it continues through the sister family concept. So this is one family that is benefiting from that program. Mr. Gülen's pioneering efforts in interfaith dialogue was recognized by the religious minority leaders in Turkey, namely the Orthodox Christian, the Armenian, both Greek and Armenian Orthodox leaders, and the Turkish Jewish community leader. They have credited him for giving prominence to the religious minorities and also making it possible for the government to take certain steps to remedy some of the sufferings of these religious minorities in Turkey. As important, perhaps more important, is the dialogue among the society who are technically nominally Muslim, but they subscribe to different ideologies and political views, and often they don't want to talk to each other. So an organization called the Writers and Journalists Foundation established a platform, a meeting called Abant Platform after this little lake in Turkey. And it brings together, it is one-of-a-kind meeting in Turkey, no other place where you can see the authors, intellectuals, journalists from so many kinds of political views and ideologies. The leftist, the rightist, the nationalist, the religious radical, the Alawi, the Kurd, Turk, you find all of them in this meeting, which is very significant. Every year it happens in a different place. And all of these efforts have been recognized at the local, at the presidential, prime minister, minister level in Turkey, as well as by prominent figures around the world. Okay. Some more examples from the schools, because I want to talk more about education, as the main theme of this conference is peace building through education. This is a group of students from a school in Şanlıurfa, which is in southeast Turkey. This is the kind of the list of the students who won the right to enter a very good school in Turkey. This is a college prep school, and these students that are listed over there had the right to enter schools of medicine or law or engineering that are top schools. And this college prep school is actually in East Turkey, which usually doesn't produce so many students who can enter those top schools. Okay. I should credit Dr. Martha Ann Kirk from San Antonio. She was the one who actually traveled to southeast Turkey and northern Iraq to picture some of the projects that I'm showing to you today. You can see her in the back over there with some students of one of those schools in there, in southeast Turkey. Free tutoring services, again in East and Southeast Turkey, serve predominantly Kurdish students. Their families cannot afford a paid tutoring service. So these centers in impoverished neighborhoods serve tens of thousands of kids, giving them opportunity to enter high-quality colleges, high-quality high schools in their region or elsewhere in Turkey. And then you can see some of their teachers in the back. An important contribution is the education of the girls, especially in, again, South and Southeast Turkey and East Turkey. Many of the parents are very conservative. Sometimes after a certain age, they don't trust the public institutions. So these institutions promise them an environment where their daughters can get training and education in a safe environment, which would respect their family values. Let me come to the concept of the committed core and illustrating that with an example from Romania. I heard this story from a friend who was an administrator in a school in Romania. The school was established by Hizmet volunteers, individuals inspired by Mr. Gülen. And it is known typically as a Turkish school, in these other countries where movement participants start a school because they come from Turkey. It is typically known as a Turkish school. But the school students predominantly are Romanian children. So there was one particular student who had some disciplinary problems, and it came to the point that the administration decided to actually expel the student. But at the moment they made that decision, their reasoning was that he is setting a bad example, and if he don't do anything about it, they did everything else that could be done to help solve the problem, but it could not be solved. Therefore, that was their last resort. But the moment they decided to expel the student, his father started a campaign to stop the administration from doing that. He called parliamentarians, he called the mayor, he called the governor, he called the president, and then the school began getting calls from all these prominent people. At one point, the school administrators learned that the father was actually lobbying for a law to be passed that would prevent them from expelling the student. So finally, they said, "Okay, let's talk." They invited the parent to the school, and they talked about a solution. They said, after all these disciplinary problems, we cannot keep your son in this school. Otherwise, he will set a bad example, and we will be in a position, we will be seen as not doing something about this problem. So we have to do something. The alternative we can offer you, besides expelling your son, is to actually let him study in another campus, in another city. The father was happy. He immediately rented an apartment in this other city and sent his son to that other city, and everything is fine. So the administrators finally asked, what was the reason behind your being so vigorous, in trying to keep your son in this school? Because there are other good schools in this city. I mean, there are schools by, this nation, or there is this other school that is so good in this field, and so on and so forth. There are many other good schools. Why don't you send your son to these other schools? The father said, I know that my son has a tendency to do drugs. I studied all those other schools that you mentioned. Nobody is as careful in keeping drugs away from the school environment as you are. If you expel my son, I lose my son. Okay. This is a striking example for me because this is in the country of Romania. Historically, Romanians were not really friendly to Turks and vice versa. So all of the Romanian parents there know this is a Turkish established school, although it's not a Turkish school. But they choose to keep their children in this school. They are happy with it. I think this is a primary example of shared values, such as preventing our youth from self-destructing, self-destroying habits. So it's an illustration that people from very different backgrounds, from different ethnic, religious, cultural backgrounds, can come together around shared values, shared goals. So what happened there and what happened in other places, such as in Southeast Turkey, where the Kurdish population, their children obviously need education, otherwise they fall prey to the PKK terrorist organization. The need is there, but it is not addressed because when there is a positive opportunity, when there is an establishment of an education institution, sometimes the PKK organization threatens them, threatens their life. They attack the school. So teaching in that school, establishing that school, being an administrator in that school, it is a matter of life and death. But it is done there in Southeast Turkey. There are now tutoring centers and schools that are serving these kids and helping prevent them falling prey to the terrorist organization. So what's going on here? My There are other stories that I could talk about, but in the interest of time, I'm going to limit to that too. You can probably think of other examples in your experience. But I think what is going on there is this concept of the committed core. So the committed core is a group of individuals who are gathered around, they have a sense of solidarity around a higher calling. In the first example, they have a sense of solidarity around the calling that we have to provide a safe environment to these kids, away from drugs, away from bullying, away from violence, away from other harmful phenomena. And this is not merely a salary-paying job. This is something higher. And there is solidarity. That is, I'm not alone. You're not alone. That administrator, teacher, or principal is not alone. Because if that person is alone, that is just a hero. Heroes sometimes succeed, sometimes they die without finishing the mission. But with a group, there is a higher chance, higher likelihood of actually accomplishing something. So what happens when there is a committed core in a place where there is a need, where there is a social need? What happens there? To illustrate that, I want you to imagine an experiment you might have done. I don't know. We did it when I was a student, but the example of absorption of sugar and crystallization of sugar. Have you actually done this? Could you raise your hand if you have done that experiment? Okay, maybe half of the room didn't do it. But let me just remind you. Basically, you put water in a container that can be heated, and then you begin putting sugar, and you heat it. So as it gets warmer and warmer, you put more sugar, and it can absorb more sugar as it gets warmer. And then you saturate it with sugar. And then you let it cool down. It cools down, it cools down. And then at some point, you insert just a little bit of sugar crystal into that water. As you cool down, what you get is this. You get a big sugar crystal. Now this little crystal, that little crystal did not put that sugar in there. Right? The sugar was already in the water, but it helped make it a crystal. Okay. I think with the committed core, with the example of the committed core, that's what's happening. When you have this group of teachers and administrators in this school, let's say in Southeast Turkey, their higher calling is we're going to provide high-quality education to the Kurdish or otherwise impoverished kids in this neighborhood. And I am willing to die for this cause. And then there are other teachers maybe in that school or in the area who were not willing to do that, but when they see that committed core, they also get on board. So the effect of the committed core is to actually encourage, help everybody else who are well-meaning, but not necessarily willing to take the first step, not necessarily willing to be the hero, to actually get into action. So all those principals and administrators and teachers who are well-meaning but not necessarily doing something, when they see the committed core doing their thing, they become on board and they also help build that school or maintain that school. So is this something that can be repeated? Absolutely. The Hizmet movement is one example. There are many, many other examples. I'm sure in your experience you have seen it. It takes at least a few individuals, solidarity, so that when you get together, you can share your suffering, you can share your agony, but also renew your hope, renew your solidarity, renew your vision with your partner, with your friend. It takes a few individuals committed, have solidarity around the higher calling to accomplish that. If there is a way to actually spread this notion and this spirit, I think we can solve many of the social problems that we are suffering in our communities. And I hope that each of us will become a member in one or more committed cores. Thank you.